Shabbos, Dafim Nunvav through Samach Beis. The Gemara says regarding the sons of Shmuel, the pasuk says, "V'lo halchu vanav b'drachav, vayitu achrei habatza, vayikchu shochad, vayatu mishpat." So it describes them as being corrupt. It says vayitu achrei habatza, but the Gemara explains it wasn't that corrupt. What they did was they weren't on the level of integrity of their father Shmuel. Shmuel Hatzadik, he would engage in circuit riding. Shmuel was a judge, and he would travel to the various cities in which the Jews lived to provide judicial services. His sons would not do that. It says that his sons, Lo Asu Kain, they resided in their own cities, and people would come to them, and this would bring in more revenue for their Chazaneim Ulusafran, for their officials, for their clerks. This would bring more revenue for them. A number of Achronim explain that the Gemara says, after all, Lo Chatu, they didn't really sin. So it doesn't mean this is strictly Asr. It doesn't mean that for a Beis Din to remain in one place and have people come to the Beis Din is actually prohibited. This is a tradition even in the time of Chazal. Mishnayos and Gemaras imply that the Beis Din had a central location. People would come to them for judgment. This is what we do today. So they explain that this is not actually Asr. The way the Drisha explains it is that they had the example of their father, Shmuel, the great tzaddik, who did beyond what was expected of him, beyond that he did more than he had to, and they weren't on the same level. They didn't do the same thing. The Bach says that today we're not expected to do this. Hayidna, he says, we're not expected to do this, to travel all around, because for demographic reasons, because the Jews are sparsely distributed throughout the various cities, so it would be impractical to travel there. Also, traveling was dangerous. Enemies were on the road. Gentile enemies were on the roads. The Birkei Yosef, the Chidah brings from the Knesset Gdola that the Dayan doesn't have to travel. Shmuel himself did Lefnim Mishuras Hadin. But the criticism is if a person doesn't travel for base reasons because he wants to overcharge, he wants to increase his revenue, that's why he doesn't travel, to make things difficult for the litigants for his own benefit, that's the problem. But if he doesn't travel because he just doesn't feel like traveling, that's okay, as long as he's not doing it for improper reasons. So Mikra Din, all these Achronim are saying that it is permissible for a Beis Din to remain in one place. The criticism of the sons of Shmuel was either because they had the example of their father. At that time, Shmuel had a higher standard, which they didn't live up to. Today, that isn't the standard at all, so nobody's expected to live up to it. But at that time, they had the standard of their father, which they didn't follow, or because the situation was different, traveling was easier back then, or because they're just being criticized for not acting Lefnim Mishuras Hadin. But Meikar Hadin, the Beis Din doesn't actually have to travel. The Gemara goes on. The Gemara says that David HaMelech was not punished for causing Uriah Achiti's death. Why not? Marid b'malchus hava. Uriah deserved to die. Uriah was guilty of a capital offense of Marid b'malchus. He had rebelled against David. Why? The Gemara is very cryptic about what he did wrong. The Gemara says that he said to David, he told David, "Va'adoni Yoav va'avdei Adoni al pnei asad achonim." How can I go home? You're instructing me to go home and be with my wife. How can I do that? My master Yoav and the servants of my master are encamped in a military posture in the campaign. So how is that Marid b'malchus? Rashi says to refer to Yoav as Adoni. It's not respectful to the king to refer to anyone else as Adon in the presence of the king. Tosfos rejects that. Tosfos says he wasn't calling Yoav the king. To call him my master, his general, his commanding officer, to call him my master is not Marid b'malchus. What was the Marid b'malchus? Tosfos brings Rabbeinu Meir that the Marid was that he didn't listen to David, that he said, "You want me to go home? How can I do that? I'm going to go home and be with my wife and enjoy myself while my comrades are on the battlefield. I'm not doing what you want me to do." That was Marid b'malchus. The king tells you to do something, you have to do it, and if you don't, you're a Marid b'malchus. Rambam brings this halacha. It doesn't refer to Uriah, but Rambam says Marid b'malchus, the melech has permission, reshus, to execute him. Even, what is Marid b'malchus? Even if the king decrees on a member of his people that they shall go l'makom ploni, she'elech l'makom ploni, that they should go to a certain place, v'lo halach, he doesn't go, he's chayav misa. So the Rambam sounds like he's referring to Uriah. The Smag brings the language of the Rambam, and he says that even if he says you should go somewhere and he doesn't go, like Uriah, that's what happened with Uriah. He was a Marid b'malchus because he refused to follow the king's command to go home and be with his wife. And the Achronim, the Achmas Yosef, the Chidah, they discuss this question: does the Rambam really mean that he learned the Gemara like the Rebbeinu Meir, that the Mard Malchus was, because he didn't listen to David. Maybe everyone agrees that's called Mard Malchus. Anyway, according to some Rishonim at least, maybe all Rishonim, that is called Mard Malchus, disobeying a direct order from the king. The Gemara says about King Yoshiyahu, the last Gemara in the parak, all the way at the end, it says that Yoshiyahu was a great Baal Tshuva. There was Lohaya Lefanav, Kamo Lohaya Lefanav Melech. There was no king before him who did what he did, Asher Shav, who engaged in such a grand tshuva. The Gemara says he didn't really sin. He wasn't an actual sinner. So what was the tshuva? That he had become king when he was only 8, and they found the Sefer Torah with Chilkiah the Kohen. They found the Sefer Torah. He realized he needed to do tshuva when he was 18. So for that decade, he hadn't committed actual sins, but the Gemara says all the judgments, all the judicial verdicts he had handed down for that decade, he returned the money to the litigants. He had compelled them to pay, and he returned the money. Rashi explains, now that he saw the Sefer Torah, he read it carefully, and he was worried, maybe I have not ruled correctly in my various verdicts, therefore he returned all the money out of his own pocket. Some Rishonim understand, the Gemara is actually telling us a halacha that a person is not supposed to be a dayan until he's 18, even though in most halachas in the Torah, once a person reaches his majority, bar mitzvah, 13 for a boy, bas mitzvah, 12 for a girl, he's a full-fledged adult. But for din, to be a dayan, to be a judge, you need to be 18. Other Rishonim disagree. Other Rishonim say, the Yerushalmi says 13 is enough. So some Rishonim understand our Gemara is telling you 18. That's why he returned all the money he had compelled litigants to pay, because his verdicts were invalid. That until he was 18, none of his verdicts were valid. Other Rishonim understand that it was just a concern. Maybe Chumra Yisera, it was just an additional stringency. Maybe he wasn't fully mature. He hadn't seen the Torah, so maybe he passed him incorrectly. Rashi seems to indicate like this. He thought Shema Ta Bedina, that maybe he was... maybe he hadn't ruled correctly. Mikra Din, his judgments were valid, but as a Chumra Yisera, he returned all the money that he had compelled litigants to pay before he was 18. That's the end of Perek Behema. Next Perek, in Zion, begins B'mei Isha Yotza, the halachos of things, starts with a woman, discusses men too, things that you're allowed to wear, men and women are allowed to wear in public in a place where there's no Erev on Shabbos. Well, we'll see later in the Perek what places we're talking about, men and women. As we'll see throughout the Perek, there are primarily 2 or 3 major concerns. One of them is you're not allowed to wear things that are not considered a garment that's carrying. Other things are prohibited, even if they are considered a garment, but if there's a concern that you'll take them off, and jewelry we're going to see, that a woman might take them off to show the jewelry to her friend, and then she'll carry them. Certain cases, if there's wind, we're afraid something will blow off you and you'll carry it. So these are all cases where either, in a few cases, a minority of cases, it's actually Hotzah Daraisa. In many other cases, probably the majority, these are Gzeres Drabanan, about things you're not supposed to carry. So in the first Mishnah, some of the examples are things that are a problem for tefillah. The Mishnah says for tefillah, for immersion in the mikvah, it says lo titfal behen, certain types of jewelry a woman wears, different types of ribbons. It says she can't do tefillah in them. The Gemara explains why are we discussing tefillah. So the Gemara explains that the reason for the prohibition against wearing these types of adornments is because they're a problem for tefillah. Really, these things would stay on your head, and really there's no problem of Hotzah. But in case she has to go to the mikvah, she has to take them off. If she has to take them off, she may carry them, so they said you shouldn't wear them at all. The Mishnah Berurah brings from the Achronim, doesn't matter if it's a woman who uses the mikvah, or whether it's a woman who doesn't use the mikvah, a single woman or an older woman who's not using the mikvah, it doesn't matter. Lo polag rabbanan, Chazal prohibited all women from wearing these ribbons, even if they're not of mikvah-going age. In Shulchan Aruch and Yerdea, it says that included in the things that you're not allowed to go to the mikveh with, based on this Gemara, are shirim, nizamim, betabos, different types of earrings or nose rings and finger rings and so on, different types of jewelry you're not allowed to wear, but the Shulchan Aruch says it depends. If they're loose, they're not a chatzitza, you can wear them into the mikveh. If they're mehudakim, if they're tight, they are a chatzitza and you can't wear them into the mikveh. So the Shulchan Aruch, taken at face value, would seem to indicate that a woman could keep her jewelry on if the jewelry are refuyim. Not so clear what refuyim are. Some say that it can turn around on the finger easily. But if they're sufficiently loose, the Shulchan Aruch seems to indicate that you could leave them on. That is not the halacha, though, not accepted practice. The Achronim say that even if the jewelry is loose, you must take them off. Lechem v'simla, Rav Shlomo Gansfried, author of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he says lechatchila you have to remove them before tefillah. And some poskim say even b'diavad, if a woman goes to the mikveh and then discovers that she left her jewelry on, some of her jewelry on, even if it is loose, she still has to do tefillah again. The Sefer Beis Hillel on Yerdea brings the halacha both both the Lechem V'Simla and the Beis Hillel bring from the Tilas Yadayim. The rules in the Tilas Yadayim are you're supposed to remove jewelry. Women or men are supposed to remove their rings. Even if the jewelry is loose, you're supposed to remove it. Beis Yosef gives two reasons for that. One reason is because we're not really sure of the exact definition of loose, so anything might be considered too tight. Also because we're afraid if you leave on loose jewelry, you'll leave on even tighter jewelry. So because of that, the Beis Hillel says you have to be machmer for the mikveh to take off all jewelry. Mikveh is even more stringent than the Tilas Yadayim, and even b'diavad says that it's a problem with the tefillah. Even b'diavad, you may have to be tovel again. Rabbi Forrest in his work on Nida says you must remove even a loose ring. If you can't take it off, consult a Rav. If she was tovel with a loose ring, many poskim say it's okay b'diavad after the fact. Other poskim say it has to be repeated unless the night has passed. Once the night has passed, even if she was not intimate with her husband, she doesn't have to be tovel. Beis Hillel seems to say it's only if she was with her husband. I'll call upon him l'chatchila. Certainly, all jewelry should be removed, even loose jewelry. And b'diavad, it's a serious question. Daf Nun Ches, the Gemara talks about wearing garments that are folded. The Gemara talks about wearing a folded talis. It says if someone goes out into a Rishus Harabim, a public domain, wearing a talis folded, not worn the normal way but folded up, he's chayav b'chatas. It's asur midaraisa. You chayav b'chatas. That's hotzah, one of the lamates malachas. That's not the way you wear it. Wearing something folded is not wearing. Wearing something is not carrying. That's mutter. But wearing it folded is not the normal way to wear it, and that's actually chayav a chatas. This is how we paskin, that if a person wears a talis in a Rishus Harabim, he's chayav chatas. However, if you're wearing it more or less normally, it's around your body and it's draped down, but some of it is pulled up or folded, that's okay. Mishnah Berurah says, some say it has to cover most of your body, some say even part of your body is enough, but at least if most of your body is covered and some of it is tied around or pulled up or folded over, that's okay, because that's basically considered wearing it even though part of it is folded over. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says they would wear the talis under the coat, even though the coat would force the talis to be folded up and not worn in the fully draped in the normal way. That's okay, because the talis is basically being worn even if a small part of it is folded. Similarly, the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to wear a talis around your neck, just wrapped around your neck. And the Mishnah Berurah explains, even though we just said you're not allowed to wear a folded up talis, it all depends on sartorial custom. In places where the custom is to wear the talis wrapped around the neck like a scarf, then that's mutter. In the Gemara is talking about a place where it wasn't a derech to wear it like that. So it all depends on how the garment is worn. There are two common applications of this halacha discussed by poskim. One of them is wearing your shirt sleeves rolled up. Rav Moshe Feinstein apparently ruled, poskim are not sure why, but he apparently ruled that you should not go outside wearing rolled up sleeves. Again, other poskim say, why is that a problem? That's people wear it today, just like the talis around the neck. You can wear it around the neck if that's how people wear it. People wear their sleeves rolled up. Moreover, it could be argued that most of the shirt is worn normally, just a small part of the sleeve is rolled up. The poskim say with the talis too, if it covers most of your body and a little bit of it is rolled up, that's okay. So it's not clear why Rav Moshe was strict, but Rav Moshe is widely quoted as having been strict about this, not to go outside with rolled up sleeves. Similar question, wearing a jacket draped over your shoulders without your arms through the sleeves. Some poskim allow it. Rav Moshe ruled that it's usher. Rav Moshe apparently held that you're not allowed to wear it. There are actually two problems here, that even Simcha Bunim Cohen writes in his Shabbos home, even according to the opinions that say it is considered derech levish, it is considered wearing and not carrying. But if it's windy and it might blow off, again, we have a gzeira that if it blows off, you might come to carry it. When Rav Moshe said it's usher, it wasn't not entirely clear whether he was concerned about blowing off or concerned, like with the shirt sleeves, that it's not considered the normal way of carrying. So poskim are split on both these questions. With the jacket, again, some poskim are makel, neither concerned, they're not worried about either concern. Rav Moshe says it was a problem. Some say that you can wear it, but you shouldn't go into Rishus Harabim Daraisa. So a place without an Erev, which is still a Carmelist, Rishus Harabim Drabanan, it's okay. Some poskim say that you shouldn't wear the jacket, though, in a Rishus Harabim Daraisa. There's a report of Rebelsky that he asked Moshe, would you really tell someone he's wearing a long sleeve shirt, it's very hot, he doesn't want to wear a short sleeve shirt for tznius or for other reasons, and he doesn't, can he roll up his sleeves? And Moshe said it's okay. If you'd rather wear a long sleeve shirt but roll up the sleeves, that's okay. While other poskim just quote Moshe saying it's usher, you're not allowed to wear rolled up sleeves. On Daf Nun Tes, the Gemara talks about a woman should not wear an ir shel zav, a type of jewelry of gold. What is ir shel zav? The Gemara says Yerushalayim dedava. It's an image of Yerushalayim made of gold. like the one Rabbi Kiva made for his wife, which is a Gemara elsewhere. Gemara Nedarim talks about the jewelry he promised his wife and eventually made for her. You can't wear it because again, that's the kind of jewelry you might take off and carry. The Rishonim have a question. The Rishonim said, the Gemara in Sota says that there are various prohibitions, gzeros they made after the Churban, that certain types of celebration and joy and adornment we don't do after the Churban. So it's a Pol Mishal Titus. At that time, in the campaign of Titus, they made additional gzeros. They would go there against Ataras Chasanim V'Kalas, against different types of crowns and diadems worn by brides and grooms. Here it's clear that it's only Asr on Shabbos because of a concern for carrying, but it's mutter. So Rabbeinu Tam says, that gzera in the Gemara in Sota about Pol Mishal Titus was only for Chasanim and Kalas, not for ordinary people. The Torah brings this from the Ramban. Beis Yosef brings the Ramban, who says that gzera was only for the Kala and only for the Chasan, based on our Gemara. Ramban explains that they only prohibited it b'shas simcha, at a time of peak joy, at a time where a person has great joy. Chazal wanted to limit that, so they said, joy, yes, wedding, yes, but don't wear that Torah, something to limit your joy. But other people are allowed to wear these types of jewelry, even if they're in the forms of tiaras and diadems. That's what we pass in the Shulchan Aruch. They would go there in Hilchos Tisha B'Av, Hilchos Avelos, the Avelos of the Churban. They would go there. You're not allowed to wear a Taras Chasanim and a Taras Akala. But Sharkal Anashim and Nashim Lo Gazru, ordinary people are allowed to wear these things. The Gemara brings three opinions about the Eir Shel Zav. The Gemara brings a brisa that there are three opinions among Tanaim about the permissibility of the Eir Shel Zav. Rameir says you're chayav achatas. The Chachamim say you're not allowed to do it, but you're patura from achatas. It's only drabanan. You're not chayav achatas. It's not hotzah daraisa. Rabbi Eliezer says mutter lechatchil. What's the machlokas? The Gemara explains that Rameir says it's a chiyav chatas masahu. It's not jewelry. It's carrying. It's just like you're carrying something on your head. That's carrying. Hotzah daraisa. Rabbanan say it is a tachshit, so it's not hotzah, it's jewelry. However, there's the gzeira that she may take it off to show and to carry it. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, that gzeira doesn't apply. Why? Because who wears Eir Shel Zav? Eir Shel Zav is a very prestigious, very special piece of jewelry. Who wears stuff like that? It's Isha Chashuva. Important women, dignified women. Isha Chashuva lo mishalfa machvia. Women of that socioeconomic class don't take off their jewelry like common women do to show it around. And that would seem to imply, that might imply that all the gzeros of jewelry don't apply to Isha Chashuva because she doesn't take off her jewelry. Tosa says no. Tosa says, oh Marie, this only applies to the klila, to these types of diadems and the Eir Shel Zav. The Gemara talks about these things. Ordinary women don't wear at all. The only ones who wear them are Isha Chashuva, and they don't take them off, so the Chazal weren't gozer. Ordinary jewelry, like earrings, typical jewelry, that all women wear, even those who are not from the 1% or the 0.1%, that type of jewelry, since everyone wears it, even the Isha Chashuva is not allowed to wear it, even though she won't take it off, because once that jewelry is worn by all people, Chazal didn't want to distinguish between different classes of women. That's how we pass in Shulchan Aruch, that a klila, which is this particularly fancy piece of jewelry, you're allowed to wear. There's no gzeira that she'll take it off. But the other types of jewelry, the Achronim Paskin, that the Shemish Berurah, the Aruch HaShulchan, other types of jewelry, no one is allowed to wear, not even Isha Chashuva, because Chazal did not Chazal did not make distinctions between different types of women. The Aruch HaShulchan says, just like we said earlier today, we said with regard to Tvila, no woman is allowed to wear the type of ribbons that she'll have to take off for the mikveh, even if she's not going to the mikveh. Chazal didn't make distinctions, and here too, Chazal didn't make distinctions except for the case of the klila, which is only worn by the special women. The Mishnah said a woman is not allowed to wear nizamim, which are certain types of facial rings. What kind of rings? Nizmei ha'af. The Gemara says the rings in question are nose rings. Not so much in fashion today in yeshivish, middle-class circles in general. Nose rings they used to wear in the time of the Talmud. You're not allowed to wear those because she'll take off her nose ring to show her friend, look what I have. Rashi explains, what about earrings? Earrings are mutter. Earrings are mutter. There's no gzeira in wearing earrings because they're hard to take off. Why are they hard to take off? Because her ears are covered with her tichel, her hat, whatever she wears around her head. It's hard to take off her earrings, and therefore there's no gzeira that she'll take off the earrings to show it to her friend. This is how we pass in Shulchan Aruch, that a woman is not allowed to wear, again, we'll have to discuss later what types of places we're talking about, Rosh Hashanah, Carmelis, Chatzar, but wherever this gzeira applies, she's not allowed to wear earrings. But she's not allowed to wear nose rings, but she is allowed to wear earrings. And again, the poskim explained because the ears were typically covered. The ears were covered, it was difficult to take off the earrings, and therefore there's no gzera. Mishnah Berurah seems to accept this halacha at face value, but the Aruch HaShulchan, who's not known for being a great machmer, the Aruch HaShulchan here has a great chumrah. He says this is true because in Talmudic times, the way women dressed, they typically covered their ears. Not sure about the single women, but at least the married women covered their ears. But women covered their ears, he says, and it was difficult to get the earrings out from underneath, and therefore there was no gzera. She would take them off to show her friends. However, he says in a place where in a place where ears are not covered, not like the Talmud, then you're not allowed to wear earrings either. The prohibition against wearing jewelry and nose rings extends to earrings too, the Aruch HaShulchan says. And therefore, the gzera would apply today too. One could challenge the Aruch HaShulchan. One could argue, we find in many areas of halacha, that when Chazal explicitly gave a heter, made an exception to one of their gzeras, and gave us a reason, even if that reason no longer applies, we still say Chazal didn't make the gzera, Chazal made an exception, and therefore the exception applies today too. One could have argued that, but the Aruch HaShulchan is machmer. Aruch HaShulchan says earrings today, earrings will be usher in a place where women don't cover their ears. Daf Samach, Mishnah talks about a prohibition about wearing a sandal hamasumar, a nailed sandal, a sandal that has nails on the bottom of it. The Gemara says why. The Gemara talks about a terrible tragedy that once occurred in the time of the enemy. Jews were hiding in a cave, and these sandals resulted in a terrible massacre. The Gemara has different accounts of exactly what happened. The Gemara then goes through an extremely detailed account of what type of sandals they were talking about. The Gemara makes it clear. The poskim explain they only prohibited those particular sandals. It was a commemoration of a specific tragedy that happened then. So the gzera only applies very narrowly to that particular kind of sandal that was worn by the people in that story. But why was it gzera on Shabbos? Because the story happened on Shabbos. Some Rishonim are quoted as saying that, are you going to say the same thing? Had it happened on Tuesday, they would have prohibited it just on Tuesday. So they add, it wasn't just Shabbos happened to be an arbitrary day of the week. They say that on Shabbos, we don't want to mar the joy of Shabbos, that these sandals would remind us, would make us think of would remind us of the Maseh HaNorah, the terrible story, and it would remind us that there would be a concern that the Yemei Simcha Moadim would turn to Evel, the days of holiday and joy would turn into mourning, would remember what happened. In general, there's a halacha, you're not supposed to be sad, you're not supposed to indulge in moroseness and sadness on Shabbos. So, but the story happened on Shabbos, and so they made the gzera on Shabbos. The Gemara has a lot of details, but exactly what kind of sandal, as we mentioned, the Rishonim said it's limited to a very narrow category of sandals. The Rosh says we're not even sure what kind of sandal this is. Tzuras or Nelma Mimenu. Other Rishonim said that we don't have these types of sandals at all, so really all our sandals are mutter. However, the Hagos Hamaniya says that some of the German Rishonim said Hechmiru al Atzman, that some of the German Rishonim said that people were stringent even about sandals that wouldn't technically be part of the gzera. They were stringent anyway. Reni Rucham says also that the Gemara implies it's only these particular sandals and none others should apply. Some people have the minhag to prohibit other types of sandals. He says it seems to be a minhag batos. It seems to be an improper minhag. That's not what the Gemara was talking about. However, he says, Reni Rucham says, I didn't want to tell them that they're wrong. They should go be lenient. It becomes a minhag, nagu ba'isr. Once they were accustomed to be strict, we're not going to go overturn it, he says. Poskim also talk about another concern, that certain types of shoes would cut the ground, would cut furrows in the ground. We pass like Rabbi Shimon, he says. Rabbi Shimon says, Davar Shem Eskaven is mutter, that you can drag a bench, even if it might make a channel in the ground, as long as it's not a psik reisha. Again, they say it brings the Ran that our sandals should all be mutter, but the minhag was to prohibit them, and the Ran has a different reason why they prohibited. A third reason, not because of the gzera of the Gemara, not because of the concern with ditches, but because the sandals easily came off the feet. They were like flip-flops. They were like some kind of sandal that can easily slide, so it can easily come off the foot, and a person might carry them. Another gzera. So the Rishonim all go through basically the same thing. They all say that almost all say that the gzera of the Gemara doesn't really apply to any of our sandals. Some places have a minhag. The minhag is hard to understand. Some say the minhag is toes. Some say the minhag is, however the minhag started, it's dvarim hamutarim, but they were noeg isser, so we should keep the minhag. Some Rishonim give other reasons for the gzera, for the minhag, either because possibly because it'll cut the ground and make trenches in the ground, or because it'll fall off and you'll carry it. But the Beis Yosef brings one opinion, the Kolba, who says that Even if they're not exactly the same as the ones in the Gemara, he says that even though they're not exactly like the ones in the Gemara, but as long as they have nails and the nails strengthen the integrity of the shoe, that's enough of a reason to ask her. Because he says why? That's not true. That as long as they're not like the ones in the Gemara, it's clear that it's mutter. All the poskim say, as long as they're not like the ones in the Gemara, the Gzera doesn't apply. The Gzera is very limited to the ones in the Gemara itself. Daf Samachalaf, the Gemara talks about wearing amulets on Shabbos. Kmeya. The Gemara says, Kmeya she'ena mumcha, the halacha is, the Kmeya she'ena mumcha, an untested, we don't have a study to back up its efficacy, is also to wear on Shabbos, outside. However, a Papa said that it's clear that if it is mumcha, you're allowed to wear it. What does mumcha mean? So the Gemara has intricate rules for what's considered mumcha. They're not quite the same rules as our rules for clinical studies, but there's some kind of rules Chazal had. You can see the Gemara for the detailed rules about what's considered ismachi, what's considered established. We have to have a pattern of data that convinces us that it's reliable. The Gemara talks about ismachi gavra, and ismachi the kmeya itself, and different standards for exactly what's considered ismachi. You have to have 3 times, and so on. That's the din of kmeya. The Gemara is talking about wearing the kmeya. What about actually writing the kmeya? Can you write the kmeya on Shabbos? The writing is malacha daraisa. But what if the chol sheyesh b'sakana? The Gemara talks about both chol sheyesh b'sakana and ein b'sakana in the context of wearing the kmeya. What about writing a kmeya on Shabbos for a chol sheyesh b'sakana? If it really works, you're going to save his life. So pikuach nefesh is docha Shabbos. So this is a question that sees some lively discussion in the Achronim. The Chida brings from an ancient manuscript, he says, Rabbeinu Peretz once wrote on Shabbos, he wrote Shemos HaKodesh, he wrote mystic divine names as a skula beduka. It was beduka, it was a smachi. He had a skula beduka for a woman in labor. She's a chol sheyesh b'sakana. So Rabbeinu Peretz allegedly once did this. He actually wrote some kind of amulet, some kind of charm on Shabbos for the woman. He brings it, it's a machlokes. There is a Rambam. The Rambam is going to say, regarding a sugya later in the parak, the Rambam says that chil Shabbos we only do isurim daraisa, at least daraisas, we only do daraisas for a refuah b'derech hateva, for something that works b'derech hateva, through naturalistic, scientific basis, but something that works b'derech skula, paranormal, supernatural remedies, we don't do on Shabbos. We don't do chil Shabbos daraisa, at least on Shabbos. Other Rishonim disagree. There's a Ramban and Rashba who hold that anything that works, anything that is smachi, anything that we've established works, even if it's derech skula, we do on Shabbos for a chol sheyesh b'sakana. So he said that it's a shayla in the Rishon. And elsewhere he writes that there was an actual story once that occurred, that somebody had learned in an old book, he had learned some kind of magic amulet that was good for curing poison. It would cause people to vomit, and it would, like syrup of ipecac, I think, would cause them to vomit. It was great for poison control when somebody ingested poison, either as a suicide or for other reasons. And this person did this, and it worked repeatedly. Once on Shabbos, this happened that a woman drank poison, and she began to she started experiencing her death throes. They came to this person, and he wrote the amulet to save her life. And then there was a great controversy. Others said that chil Shabbos, to write on Shabbos an amulet. He said, "What do you mean? Pikuach nefesh, I saved her life with my magic amulet." So what's the halacha? Is this an avera? Is this an avera daraisa, drabanan? So the Chida, first he brings the opinion of the Rambam that you're not allowed to do an avera daraisa for refuah segulas, even though they were matir. The Rambam agrees to the Gemara. The Gemara says you're allowed to wear the amulet. You're allowed to wear the amulet on Shabbos, but that's not Isur Daraisa. You're wearing the amulet, not Isur Daraisa. Isur Daraisa, you're not allowed to do, even for Chol Sheyesh B'Sakana, if it is a supernatural remedy. But then he says, as he says in this other discussion, that there are Rishonim who disagree. There are Rishonim who say that even a Malacha Daraisa can be done, even Derech Skula, for a Chol Sheyesh B'Sakana, so it's Machlokes Rishonim. Later, Achronim Ashkenazim also, throughout the 19th century, discussed this case. The Marsham talks about sending a telegram for a Chola, sending it to those who believe in tzaddikim, he says. L'maminim b'tzaddikim, can you send a telegram to a rebbe, to a tzaddik, to pray for someone on Shabbos? Pikuach nefesh, mutter to machal Shabbos, even Isur Daraisa. So he says, but you have this question, whether we do chil Shabbos Daraisa for a refuah, which is skula, which is not derech hateva. He brings the achronim, and he says, l'maisa, at the very least, the minimum is, he says, it has to be a smachi or tzaddik. This tzaddik has to be, we have to have established his reputation for being a miracle worker, someone whose tefillos are answered. Uvdi Yedana, he says, I know a story, he says, in the city I was born in Zlatshov, there was once a chola who was dangerously ill, chola mesukan, and he says the Rebbe, the Marash of Belz, lived in Brody, and the local dayan in Zlatshov allowed to write a letter via a non-Jew, to write a letter to the chola, the sick person, and his mother's name, and send it to Brody, to Brod, to the Marash of Belz. Shlomo Kluger, the great Rav of Brody, was furious, and he said, this dayan is now fired, this dayan, we're revoking his smicha, he cannot paskin anymore. And the Rebbe, the Marash of Belz, was disturbed for a different reason. He said, or partly for a different reason, he said, now I better make sure my tefillah is answered. Otherwise it'll really be Chil Shabbos. So I have to make sure that this particular tefillah will be answered. V'chein hayash in Rapa. He actually got better. L'maisa, the Marsham says, halacha l'maisa, you should not be lenient about this. You should not actually do Chil Shabbos for refuah derech skula, for tefillah. Certainly in our generation, mikama time, you shouldn't do this. And this is a place to where we apply Chazal's rule that we learned in Brachas, Shabbos imi lizok, Shabbos, we're not going to do certain things we would do during the week, but Hashem is in charge. Hashem will have Rahmanas even if we're not doing what we would do during the week. Similarly, there's a tshuva in the Chasam Sofer. There was a cure for epilepsy. People believed that if you would put your hand on the cadaver of a non-Jew and you would say, "Here, take my sickness. Won't hurt you. You're dead already, and you'll do me a big favor." People had tried this and it worked. The question was, a Kohen wanted to do this. Kohen can't touch a dead body. It's this week's Parsha, Parshas Emor, Tumas Kohanim. But it's Pikuach Nefesh. The sickness he had was a dangerous disease. So can you do that? So the Chasam Sofer says that he assumed that if it's Pikuach Nefesh, then certainly you can do a refuah, even if it's derech skulas, even if it's a lav daraisa. However, he says, it doesn't sound like this refuah is really Baduka. You said you tried it once and it worked. You saw it in an old book somewhere. That's not Baduka. That's not a smachi. Therefore, he has a long discussion about whether, in the face of uncertain evidence, less than gold standard evidence, whether you can allow Chil Shabbos, in this case, allow a different lav daraisa or Tumas Kohanim, even for Pikuach Nefesh, for something that is really not Baduka. But again, getting back to Shlomo Kluger, he talks about the same question, that they believed in the skula that if they touched the dead body, there would be a skula to cure themselves of epilepsy. He says he saw the Chasam Sofer, but the Chasam Sofer is wrong, he says, because we don't do a refuah segulis involving an Isser Daraisa, so he would not allow this, even if it would be Baduka, it doesn't matter, you're not allowed to do this. Daf Samach Beis, it says that a woman cannot wear certain things. One of them is a ring that has a chosim. A ring with a signet, in the time of the Talmud at least, was something men wore, women didn't wear. So for a man, that would not be a chiyav chatas, but for a woman, it's a problem, because for her, that's not a malbush, that's carried. Gemara brings Ula. Ula said chilufein be'ish. For a woman, a jewelry ring, an adornment ring is malbush. That's a normal thing, and that she can wear, putting aside the gzera of taking it off in a public place. But the tabashi yeshel achosim is not a malbush for her, so she cannot wear it. Chilufein be'ish. Man is just the opposite. A chosam ring, a ring with a signet, is part of what men do. They do business. In Samach Chazal, they did business. Women didn't do it, so he can wear the chosam ring, but he cannot wear the jewelry ring, because for him it's not a masa. It's not considered wearing, because men didn't wear jewelry rings. The Gemara explains Ula Shita, Kasavar Ula Nashim Ambifnei Atzmanhein. In certain contexts, we say that if for some people it's a malbush, for all people it's a malbush. But when it comes to men and women, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Nashim are Ambifnei Atzmanhein. Men and women are like different nations. What's good for the goose is not good for the gander. What's good for the gander is not good for the goose, and therefore, just for women it's jewelry, for men it's not jewelry, for men it's a masa. There's a major machlokes rishonim here. There are two machlokes rishonim. One of them is, for men we said if it's anal of chosam, there's a chiyuv, but yeshel of chosam, for a man it's normal to wear a signet ring, so it's not chayav. It's not considered hotzah daraisa. But is it aser anyway? Is it aser midrabanan because of the gzeira? The man's going to go out with the signet ring. He's going to find his friend and say, look at my signet ring. It's cooler than yours, or whatever he says. Look at my signet ring. Is there a gzeira? The man will take off his ring like what goes there for women. So Rashi says yes. Rashi says for a man, if it's yeshel of chosim, it's potter, but it's still aser. Ben Tam says no, the gzeira only applies to women. Women typically take off their stuff to show it to other people. Men don't do that, and therefore the gzeira does not apply to men. One machlokas. Second machlokas. First, we should note though that even within the shita of Rabbeinu Tam, that they weren't gozer on male jewelry, but Rabbeinu Tam is Machalik. The Rush explains in Shitas HaRush that something which is only worn by men and not women, like a signet ring in the time of Chazal, there's no gzeira. Something which is worn by both, like a jewelry ring in the time of the Rishonim, where men wore jewelry rings also, then it is asur even for the men, because since women wear that too, and for women there is a gzeira, the gzeira applies to men. The Ran says no. The Ran says that again, in the time of Chazal, he also acknowledges that in his time, in the medieval era, men did wear jewelry also. So he says that in Chazal's time, it's true that a jewelry ring for a man would be a masa, it would be hatzah deraisa. In his time, he says it's not a masa. Not only that, but he says it's actually mutter. It's mutter, he says, lechatchila, mutter for a man to wear a jewelry ring because it's a tachshit and there's no gzer. Rambam, the Beis Yosef, says, Rambam has a third opinion. Rambam says, he brings the Gemara that a man is allowed to wear a tabash yesh l'chosam, but even lechatchila, that he wasn't gozer because tabash yesh l'chosam is unique to men and there's no gzera. However, be'enol of chosam, a jewelry ring is chayav chatas. A man who wears a jewelry ring outside is chayav chatas. He does not distinguish between the time of Chazal and his time. He just says that men don't wear rings at all. More strict than the Gemara was, and that's the opinion of the Rambam. The Rebbeinu Yerucham Shita is that men are allowed that the Rebbeinu Yerucham Shita is that for men wearing jewelry rings bizman hazeh is not a chiyuv chatas. However, he says it is still asur that the gzeira of that the gzeira still applies. The gzeira that he'll show it to someone else still applies. La halacha, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that a man is not allowed to wear a tabat she'ein alav chosam, and he's chayiv. However, if it has a chosam, according to Rashi, pater, but there's still a gzeira, according to Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam, that if it's uniquely male accoutrement like a chosam ring, there's no gzeira. However, something that men and women both wear, then there still is a gzeira. So Mechaber goes like the Rambam that jewelry rings are absolutely asur for men. Jewelry rings are absolutely asur for men, and you're even chayav achatas. The Ramah brings the other opinion, bizman hazeh, since men wear jewelry rings also, then it is a tachshit and it's mutter. And he brings it as a yesh omrim elsewhere. The Mechaber himself brings the yesh omrim elsewhere. The bizman hazeh, that men wear the jewelry rings. He brings yesh omrim that it's okay for men to do it, and even lechatchila like the Ran. Bir Halacha explains that the Beis Yosef sides with the Rebbeinu Yerucham that it's not a chiyuv chatas. That it's not a chiyuv chatas as long as men do it, but there still is a gzeira that he'll take it off and show it. In the Beis Yosef, he said he brought Rebbeinu Yerucham and he said that dvarim shel tamhem, that since it's a tachshit, you're not chayav chatas, not like the Rambam. So la halacha, according to the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah, a man who wears jewelry outside where there's no eruv would not be chayav chatas. However, it would still be asur, just like it's asur for women to wear jewelry. It would be asur for a man to wear jewelry as well, because the jewelry, which is something that women wear also, the gzeira that he'll be shlafu machvi, that'll show it to someone else, still applies. And wherever women don't wear jewelry, a man shouldn't wear a jewelry ring as well.